Well, I guess we got a couple minutes for at least a couple questions. I'm gonna I would say launch a first question and obviously invite you all to raise some questions. I'll start with your last slide. Together we can contribute to something better, bigger, etc. I would say, looking at your companies, your experiences, and obviously the excellence, the amount of top talent you have with you, what's ahead of you? Not in terms of your strategy of company information you may not be able to share. What's ahead of you, your operations in Portugal, and what should we be looking at to escalate? We know we have issues, talent pool, etc. We're gonna speak about talent pool next. But what are the real challenges to play it largely?
Well, May I can start? As I was saying, we have been growing between 30 and 40% a year, and that's one thing I said. The other thing I said is that I had never seen so many opportunities as now. So I know that we can grow faster than we have been doing till now. And in terms of scalability, it has always been a concern that we had. So it was always part of our strategies to build an extremely scalable model, and this is the only reason why we have been growing year on year at this rate. There are stuff that we can improve in Portugal. I've just mentioned one. Today there is a huge, there are great talent in countries that are outside the European Union. People that are eager to come to Portugal. It's true. So we need to find a smart way to lift the barriers for these people to come, because we cannot say on one hand we don't want our brains to leave, and then we see amazing people that can create tremendous value for us and forsake that opportunity. That's one thing. The other thing is that we've talked here today a lot in terms of corporate tax and the competitiveness of Portuguese corporate tax. And this is a traditional view of economics. Okay, companies, they can move around, so we need to be competitive. People, they don't move, so we don't need to be competitive. So let's have people paying the taxes and reduce the taxes on companies. I'm very favorable to reducing the taxes on companies, of course, but we need also to be competitive from a tax perspective for people. Because if we want to attract talent and we want to keep talent, there's no way to do it if we are not competitive from a tax perspective, also for the individuals.
Thank you. Antonio, Pedro?
I can comment about our case. Let me say, about the Nokia Center, the structural change happened in 2012, right? So what we can have now is incremental growth for this center, depending from the market evolution. But which means that we must be always understanding what is going to happen in the market. Again, right. Technology, what is happening with our customers, and be prepared for take it. Because then is a competition between us and the other center in India. So about the other possibilities, so we need to watch. Because we don't have only a center of service, we have a center of R&D.
Right.
So you have to watch to all opportunities you see, and be competitive always. And be ready. That's it.
Antonio, yesterday we spoke a lot about RPA, robotic process, the future that's coming up. How do you, kind of linking the two questions, what's ahead and how do you see its importance in your growth perspectives?
Automation is very important because most of the activities that we did or we do currently, and I think we are going to do in the future, pass from the automation of process for the improvement, and that will benefit for having high-skilled people inside of the organization. Picking João's comment around some perspective of improvements on the future, I think that we need to have on a short term, and I believe on a short term, more spaces available to be occupied by nearshoring activities or outsourcing activities, because on the last 2 or 3 years the spaces that were available were more or less occupied, so there is some area of improvement here or investment in this area.
Real estate.
And on real estate, and there is another area that is, I think it is very critical here in Portugal, but I think important to comment is that on the last 3 or 4 years we had a lot of people that decided to move out of Portugal for the economic and finance reasons that you are aware. And I believe that on short term we are going to compete resources between the partners or the entities that work with us, especially when we compare the local salary that is low than a salary that is paid to a nearshoring activity that is sometimes or most of the times higher. So I believe that for a company that has only a local operation like Vodafone Portugal here, we will face some type of difficulties on retaining people, because the people are going to be attracted more to activities where they are paid more. So this is a normal phenomenon. And because a lot of people went out of Portugal, I think that this will be an issue on short term.
I think we should proceed. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's like one or two questions from the audience. We could be here for much longer time. Any specific, anyone? There's one up here. Thank you.
So I understood you have big operations. Did you ever had to transform the people? You know, you brought centers here and you have big operations. Did you ever had to transform, go to any transformation process? How easy was it to manage the people side of things? And I'm asking this question because in some other countries that we heard earlier, in my experience is when you get to an operations of 600,000 and more, sometimes it's very, very difficult to change. You know, the workers' councils, everything regarding that is very, very difficult to change. And I wonder what is your experience based in Portugal?
It's like this. And for us, we could not manage a company, a 10 million euro company, the same way we would manage a 5 million euro company, and we could not manage a 50 million euro company the same way we would manage a 25 million euro company. So every time we've doubled the size, we've basically changed completely the management team, the processes, everything. There's no other way, because if you try to manage a company of 25 with the process of the 50, you'll break the company, and the other way around the same. So we have been embracing change constantly and accepting that as much as we invest in people to grow with the company, sometimes we have to make adjustments, and we need to continuously be adjusting to process. And in the meanwhile, of course, the whole world is changing, and it's a neck-to-neck race to compete against other companies. As you're seeing, Telefones Portugal has been growing in Portugal. Not really because there's like a decision from worldwide corporate to put money here. It's because we are able to demonstrate to Expedia, to eBay, to Netflix, to Symantec, to all these companies that we can provide better here than they can get in other countries. So it's a neck-to-neck competition against the companies in Germany, against the company in Holland, against the companies in Eastern Europe, in Northern Africa. It's a day-to-day race that we need to beat. So because of the growth and because of the changing of the environment, we need to constantly adapt.
And we got to cut it. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, coming close to an end, we're going to have another panel, another session. Once Pedro is here, we're going to have some microphones. Pedro Santa Clara, from to my left, Nova School of Business and Economics. We're going to be speaking about talent pool, where we stand and what we need to do. It's definitely one of the key issues. To deliver better services, we got to have qualified, trained, retrained professionals. And we're going to discuss it looking at the perspective of the academia. We've invited Rui Costa, the perspective of the research and investigation, Fundação Champalimau, a real big state-of-the-art case we have to showcase more and more. It's a pleasure to have you both, of course, here. João Vasconcelos down here, from Startup Lisbon. Of course, Lisboa, it is a brand. We need more entrepreneurs to look at Portugal, to come to Portugal, to start their businesses in Portugal, to invite their friends, to hire people, etc. So where do we stand? Let's talk about it as facing the future. Like we pretty much have heard a lot about where we stand today. what are you really looking in terms of, in your case, bringing more foreign people to be in love with Portugal, to get good education, to retain them, to attract foreign people? You the same, like we visited Fundação Champalimau on Wednesday. It's obviously amazing, we all know that, and the environment and the thrill and excitement of foreign people working there, it's definitely a case we would like to hear about. And lastly, we have, of course, Mario, which will share with us the business perspective of our talent pool and what's ahead. I'll let you go. Let's start hearing you, and we'll get it going with questions eventually from the audience.
Sure. So
No specific order. You go.
It's fine. I'll kickstart things. I'll tell you a little bit about a sector that's probably a surprise for many of you. That's not really about outsourcing or nearshoring, but it actually has a lot of similar features to that. And I'll start by throwing some numbers at you to motivate the discussion. The Nova School of Business and Economics, which some of you may have heard about, is a business school in Lisbon, which has experienced in the last 7 years, I'd say, a very surprising growth. To give you a sense, we've grown applicants by more than 40% a year for seven years in a row. These academic year that's starting right now, we had 52% of the candidates were international. This was the first time that we had more international candidates than nationals. And the composition of this international student body is quite surprising, because 40% of the international students are German, to give you a sense of the scale.
40%.
40% of the international students, so 20% of the total. We have a bit more than 200 German students taking their master's degrees at Nova. These are not exchange students. We're talking about students who come here for 2 years, live here, pay tuition, pay room and boarding, and so on. The next biggest group is Italian. They're about 20% of the total, then French, then Scandinavian, and then, of course, students from more than 60 countries across the world. And I'm mentioning this because it's also it's a very international school by European standards. But if you compare it to, say, British schools, which have a lot of students coming from China or India, in our case, we tend to attract more from Europe, and I think that may be relevant for some of you. Of course, the flip side of this coin is that close to 60% of our students have their first employment abroad. Again, to give you some perspective, of course, consultancies are big recruiters, and they tend to recruit from Portugal to everywhere in the world. And then you have banks in London, tech companies in Dublin, and then no discernible pattern. And I'm mentioning this because there's a lot of similarities to nearshoring. The reason we're able to attract students is that they're happy about the academic quality, as translated by rankings or the placement success of the school or whatnot, but they also like the lifestyle. And I'm not just talking about the sun and the sea, but also Lisbon is a lively city. You have all the healthcare, education, and so forth of the first world at discount prices, I guess. And that's a very serious proposition to attract students. I think this matters. I mean, Guilherme mentioned that this in itself can be a huge export industry. Again, to give you an interesting example, exports of higher education is the second largest export industry of Australia, just behind natural resources. Wow. It's bigger than tourism. It's quite large also in Canada, the US, the UK, and so forth. It can have an important place in Portugal, but it's, in a sense, much more important than that, because when you attract talent to study here, you change the perspective that the rest of the world has of the country. During college times is when you build the connections with people that will last you through your professional career. So there's a big network effect, I think, of being able to attract very good foreign students. In terms of the future, I think the future is quite bright. What's sort of holding us back right now is we're terribly capacity constrained. We're working out of a 19th century convent, and we're started a couple of years ago the process of moving to a new campus. That's what I've been doing these last 2 years, at a horrible time for this country because there was no available public monies. So the whole project has been privately funded. Basically, companies like yours, in fact, some of your companies, have been big donors to our project, partners to our project, because this doesn't happen just out of charity. It happens by building mutually beneficial partnerships. Hopefully, in a year or so, in 2 years, we'll be able to move and then expand. But there's other constraints holding us back. There's some, lots of silly bureaucratic constraints from government. We still have this sort of Sovietic view of education, where the education Soviet decides how many students in undergraduates we should have, which students, how much tuition to charge. We need true sort of autonomy in order to be able to really grow and prosper. And I think that will be the key to produce all the internal talent needed by multinationals, and also to be able to attract foreign talent to work over here.
Rui, the whole view behind Fundação Champalimaud has nothing to do with Sovietic approach, view, whatever. It's totally the opposite. And you represent a case where investigators are not going to Switzerland and coming to Portugal, etc.
So the Fundação Champalimaud, for those that don't know, was founded a bit over 10 years ago, and we built a center that has been open 4 or 5 years ago. I was involved since very early, since 2006, in the planning, and then in 2009 I moved to Portugal. I was in the US. So there were a few things that we wanted to be good globally, so there's no point in being in our business, right? There's no point in being cheaper, because if you don't discover, we're very inexpensive, but we don't find anything good, you're useless. So we had to be good at something. So we had to be creative. And I wanted to make here a distinction between innovation and creation, right? I can be innovative if I now take off my pants. You'll be like, wow, that was, but it's not very creative. I mean, you're not creating anything. So we needed to create anything. So in neuroscience, which was the first area, and where we picked a niche on understanding really mechanistically how you make decisions in general, about how to eat, what to do, what not to do, when the process goes wrong. It's touching economy and psychology and everyday biology and politics, but also going at a very mechanistic level. And the second thing is we had to think globally from the beginning. We couldn't think, well, let's start small and then grow and then go globally, because it wouldn't work, right? If you start small, you kind of imprint in your DNA that you're small. Yeah. So you have to say, we are now small, but we sold ourselves as something, and I say this with sometimes a bit of shame, but not too much because I think I'm an honest person. We sold ourselves bigger than what we were. We sold ourselves always as, this is what we want to be. You know, and if people say, but what are you now? I'm like, this is what we want to be. Look here. And so this takes the advantage when people buy in, and majority of our faculty and graduate students are internationally, they buy into that. And then when they come in, they are fighting for that, or most of them. And then the attitude has been something that is a bit, it's a bit difficult, right? So we attract the best in Portugal, or try to attract, but we have to get rid of this mentality that, so we have to produce knowledge, and knowledge is wealth. It doesn't mean it's money, it's wealth for society. And people have to be committed to that. They have to be able to communicate to the public and to companies and what are you doing, why should I care, what is this, what does this have to do with me. One of the most challenging, or two very challenging things, one has been perspective, right? So people getting the perspective, where are you in the world? Are we, I mean, you hear in the news sometimes, best institute, research in Portugal, top in the world, right? We're not top in the world. Oh, we're very bad, we're not. And in specific domains, we're close to the top. In other domains, very, close by, I mean, economics or marketing, it may be very different. So we need to have a perspective, and it's very hard if you just stay here. So we bring lots of people through and send people always through. But this is the hardest thing. People don't have a perspective. Sometimes they're saying, this is unique, we've created it here. And people are like, what are you talking about? I mean, it's just... And the second thing, I mean, when now we're facing this challenge, we made a 5-year plan and then a 10-year plan. The 5-year plan, which was to have most of the funds external from the initial endowment, was achieved, to have a certain number of people, certain number of findings, metrics, right? But retaining talent in Portugal is very difficult because the attitude is not in long-term retaining, is in short-term success, and how can we create something that is attractive? And I have to say, I mean, now I'm faced with a challenge. It is easier to create something cute that people buy in. It's very difficult to go from a cute Facebook in the garage to a world thing. And I feel we don't have that attitude, that perspective, that's where I feel I struggle. And I love being here because some of you are inspirations. We take many ideas from business, but it's how it works.
I like that lack of perspective topic. We'll get back to it. João, you're in the hype, vibrant world of startup, incubator, a lot of movement. What do you have to share?
Hello, thank you for the invitation. Well, now in my personal situation, it's been very easy to attract foreigners to Lisbon. It's very easy to attract companies to Lisbon every day. It's what we do every day at Startup Lisboa. It's a great moment to be living and working in Lisbon. Lisbon now, it's for the new generations, like probably Barcelona was for our generation in the 90s. Lisbon, it's cool, it's attractive, and we are very focused on attracting businesses that can grow in the urban space. We are only tackling the industries that born and grow in historical parts of the city. We are competing with other cities, not with countries. We are competing with East Berlin, East London, Amsterdam, and we are winning. We are attracting every week companies from abroad and from developed countries. So it's not the criteria, obviously the criteria to attract these companies and the criteria they are using to decide where to locate their offices are different from the big corporations. Obviously, there's here the main, obviously cost is important, but East Berlin is the same price as Portugal. Even engineers you can have for the same price or lower cost in Eastern Europe. So it's not only the cost. What they are looking for, it's a cool city to live, a great city to have people from different nationalities. For example, what we saw from the presentation of Teleperformance, for example, it's a great example how to benefit from a city that can, where any culture can live. So this is probably the only city, the only capital in Europe where you can have in the same neighborhood a synagogue, a mosque, and a Christian church. And so don't forget that. If you want to create a global company, if you want to create a global mindset in your company, probably Lisbon, it's really the best place in Europe today. Obviously, we already have this for some time. The rest of Europe and the rest of the world only noticed this after we connected to the world. For me, there are a lot of criteria, a lot of things that help with this, but the main, the most important moment was the low-cost flight companies. So now the world is coming. Now the world knows that Lisbon, it's, for example, for the generations where we work every day with a lot of young people. Only after the low-cost companies came to Lisbon, it's that for them Lisbon became a European city. So for those who don't know, Startup Lisboa is a business incubator, very focused on tech, web, digital, and software. In 3 years, we received about 4,000 applications. We helped around 250 startups that generated almost 700 jobs, direct jobs. The majority of our companies, they don't have any customers in Portugal. They only have customers outside of Portugal. It's digital business, e-commerce, mobile, so it's not, the majority are not even B2B. We only occupy empty buildings in historical parts of the city, so we have a very important need of, it's one of our objectives, obviously, it's urban rehabilitation. So that's why we receive a lot of support from the City Hall, and we work very closely with the Invest Lisboa, it's the Lisbon City Agency to attract investment, and the ICEP too. We are very focused on selecting and discovering the companies that are going to be big like yours, like the ones that speak here, but when they are small. We think that Lisbon can attract when they are small, and as you know, this sector, it's high growth sector, and companies like Uber and others, 5 years ago was 20 employees, now they have thousands. So those are the companies we are very focused on attracting and to help if they can start here. So a good example, the most known example in Portugal, it's Uniplaces. Uniplaces 3 years ago, it was 3 guys in Startup Lisboa, now they have 140 persons already. But we have other situations, not even from Startup Lisboa, like TalkDesk. TalkDesk now it's around 120 employees, and they raised 21 million euros investment from Silicon Valley investors. This is the first, and this is very serious. And this is very serious and a big responsibility for all of us, all. Because the awareness that these young companies are bringing to the tech sector in Portugal, in other places, it's going to benefit all of you. And it's a serious thing. This is the first time Portuguese companies raise investment from the best investors in Silicon Valley, in Boston, in London, in Berlin. This never happened. And these are companies focused on very, very developed markets. Not the Portuguese language, no. They are competing really in the center. This is the first time we have this kind of generation of entrepreneurs and companies. And this is a big responsibility for everyone. And these are companies, this was only obviously possible because of the ecosystem, companies like the ones that already use, and Startup Lisboa is one good example of that. Startup Lisboa lives on mentors and partners, like Novabas and others, that feed us with their knowledge, with their support, like, for example, well, not with Startup Lisboa, but it's a good example because you saw the presentation. Teleperformance, for example, they are supporting a lot of entrepreneurs and startups in Lisbon and to come to Lisbon. So this is only possible with your help, as mentors, as good examples of what's happening. This is a historical moment for the tech entrepreneurship and tech industry in Portugal, and I think it's still beginning. Web Summit coming next year. It's probably you you prefer World Mobile Congress or CEBIT, but
Maybe
for us, Web Summit, for example, it's 40,000 people from all around the world, about 5,000 startups. It's coming to Lisbon next week, so it's putting, Lisbon is becoming the most prominent city on tech entrepreneurship in Europe next week.
Just
Next year, sorry.
Thank you, João. Before passing the word to Mario, I just want to, reinforce the fact that there's actually a huge vibration around incubators and startup locations, businesses, etc. Obviously, Lisbon being a very good example, but we know, and you know, of course, and you talk to them eventually, there's a lot of very good startup movements in the country today, overall, from north to south. Braga is a great example. Porto, they've been doing a tremendous job. And some even interior regions are waking up to the issue. Obviously, they face different problems, different issues, constraints. But it's great to know, and it's great to even interact with them, because we can also promote them and help them. Mario, you are the company here, so it all seems like love stories here, but you are on the field. It's got to be tough, right?
Yeah. Well, we've been deling with reality, yes,
Right.
for the last 20 years. I'm very happy to be here. My professional career has been is something that maybe is not that common anymore, but it has been for 23 years with Altitude. I started with João Cardoso. I see a lot of people here that I've worked with along the years. We did get venture capitalist investment back in '98 when nobody was talking about it. So yes, we went through. I think we leaded the pack. I'm very excited on the image that João presented on the customer experience and the customer engagement, which I think we helped develop throughout the world. We were born international, so our first customer was international. So the mindset of kicking off in Portugal and going abroad, that was not the mindset. Now with the internet, things are much easier. You can open up to the world. I think that Elon mentioned that we should be looking at an image and a brand and focus ourselves. I think, and the mindset that was mentioned by Rui, I really think that we need to put our act together in terms of the message that we want to pass to where do we want to be. And from the options given, I would take R&D, I would take engineering, but also making use of that engineering in the BPO world, in the IT services, and more closer to us on the contact centers, or now on the customer engagement experience. So I think we have to really sell ourselves more than we do. Not lie, but but be confident that we can reach there. So I think that maybe the main thing that we have to do is to position ourselves as a leader, as the opportunity to become a leader and to provide these services. We ourselves we're proud to have a product or a solution that does help outsourcers, that does help business process outsourcers and IT services to handle the interactions with the customers. And the customers are all over the world, and all companies of all verticals, of all areas do have to interact with their customers. So that's key. So that's a magical moment that you really have to make it a success, so that the client creates an image of your company and of your service. We've been doing, so we're now a 300 people company. We do have multitude of nationalities. I think we have to be open with and learn from what the others do and how they do it, but also be very confident on our capabilities. What I like to say is, in particular in the technology world, is that our skills are well-rounded. I mean, I'm able to have, and sometimes that happens often with customers, I go into or send somebody into meet a customer, and then he has to meet with the security guys for data privacy, then he has to meet with the business side and some IT deployment, and they bring 5, 6, 7 guys, and I bring 1, 2, 3, because we have the ability to be well-rounded and then interface with the customers at that level. And even at altitude, we are doing, we are expanding. We have operations worldwide, but we are doing our own nearshoring and offshoring. So, of course, we have a center in, for instance, in São Paulo to cover Latin America. We have a center in Lisbon to cover Europe, and we have then the people that are spearheaded in the different countries. I'm going through my 3rd experience out of the country. So I was for 3 years in the States. I was for a year and a half in Brazil, and now coming to 3 years in Madrid. I think that one of the points that we have discussed about it is how scarce people are. Germany comes here and picks up our guys, and we are finding more and more difficult to find the skilled people. So cooperation with universities is key. But also, I don't believe that you have to bring the guys that left back. I think what you have to be able to do is build a bridge with those people, because if you want to have an image, a brand,
That's going to support.
those are the people that are going to sell our brand. Yeah, of course, everything isn't a bed of roses, but there are some difficulties. So we're losing some people. We have to invest more in the. I've been part of Nova Business also in some courses, so I'm happy to see them here working hard at increasing the knowledge of our minds. I think we have to innovate, but also see, for instance, mix together the technology that we already have in the Portuguese companies and with other businesses. So don't go outside and look for other technology. So we do have technology in Portugal that mixed with innovation and other businesses, we can even export more. Maybe, yeah.
You go ahead. Yeah. No, I was just thinking. I feel kind of lost here because having listened to all these cases, all these excellence, we're not putting the scale factor on it. But of course, throughout the morning, we heard a lot of very good stories, and it all seems that we're definitely very well prepared to somehow play a role within this world of ours, which we are not playing. So I would say, we're not all the best, we're not all here, etc. But what can we do together as in terms of lobbying? What can we do? We need, the political side of the story next to us, etc. We have ICEP this morning with us. They've been engaged, cooperative, committed. Lately, the government has been close to us, but what else can we do? What's missing? We're never going to be able to just have another baby boom. So it's not all about just waiting a generation for kids, even if every couple would be having kids today. But how can we lobby together? I mean, we've got the academia, the excellence of thinking about the unknown.
I have a suggestion for that. We must, Portugal must be proud of this industry. This is not a problem. Selling services is not a problem. This is the industry for a developed country in the 21st century in Europe.
João, I'm sorry.
We should be proud of this.
Ilan was saying yesterday that everyone really, outsourcing is not a fancy word. But Ilan was putting it into the right direction. It's
Lisbon,
about perception, not the wording.
Yes, I think the country is still not proud of this kind of industry. For example, Lisbon City, it's proud to have teleperformance at Lisbon. We are proud to have that. Obviously, it's call centers. No, it's not call center. We are proud to have a company like that in Lisbon. It's a developed world company. It's a company that can only exist in a sophisticated, developed society in Europe. That's the kind of companies we must attract, and we must focus all our very low resources we have from the government and privates and universities. We don't have a lot of resources, so we must focus on this. And we see that if you produce something or the transactional goods, it's priority instead of services. And I think it's wrong. If I go to London, if I go to Amsterdam, if I go to Berlin, Frankfurt, and Munich, I don't see the same speech as here. So
No,
they are proud of this kind
at
of
all.
companies. And we must be proud as a nation of these kind of companies. I think if we achieve that, everything changes.
I agree.
Wait.
I mean, I'm going to be very straight and pessimistic because you guys deserve it. From companies, from people like the ones that are here in Portugal, I've been invited many times to talk. I interact. From the academia, zero. I have zero to say on policy, on science in Portugal. In Europe, very easy. In the US, very easy. We have all our web email is Google, directly from Google. We cannot strike a deal with a local company. It is amazing, right? If you tell me, do you feel comfortable in this environment? Absolutely
You
comfortable.
cannot,
At coffee
of course.
breaks, I don't feel comfortable in the Portuguese academia. There's between provincial thought and jealousy or small-mindedness, so we're not proud of the other that did well. I'm proud, I'm seeing these things and, I don't think call center. I think the customer, I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
The client comes first. How does a person that goes to be treated or participate in research at Champalimau should have this experience? This is what I'm thinking, right? So I completely agree with this. And I think that the reason why in business this is happening and in MBAs and economy, it's because we're talking globally. I mean, there's no
As simple
point
as that.
to
As
start
simple.
with, right? There's no point. There's no other point. I mean, every one of you that is here works globally. You have to. The rules are global. The education is global. Unfortunately, in the rest, I think we're faced with a different type of attitude. And I would love to partner to lobby, to be proud, but it's amazing. I mean, I give you my own example. I've talked at Porto Cela, Suriana, Nova Baz, everything, but not at, FCT or the Ministry of Science.
Well,
it's a very different
That's another
type of
conference.
mentality. Yes.
Pedro, are you proud to announce that next week Rui is going to be at Nova?
No. I mean, we are actually, Nova is the one that gives our PhDs. I didn't mean
now we have a very
academia
good
in that
relation.
sense. I didn't mean
I think
that.
we meant
Yeah,
the
the
Ministry
same.
of Education, not so much other universities.
Okay.
Look, a country doesn't change overnight. It
course.
takes time. I've lived 18 years abroad and came back. So, all this talk about losing a generation always makes me itchy because I think what Portugal lacked was that we were close to the outside world for 100 years.
Yeah.
And now we have a very healthy movement of people going out, coming back, others coming in. That's what's ultimately going to change the country. Of course, I was telling you about the case of Nova, the business school. It's an outlier. If you go, we have very good schools. You go to the medical school.
Right.
There's two very good in Lisbon. You go to a couple of very good engineering schools. They're much more parochial than we are. They're not, at least in terms of attracting students, they're not at all competing internationally. They may be good research institutions, but they almost have the opposite view. If you every time you hear a discussion about the number of places in medical school, you hear about constraints and what should be the optimal number given the needs of the National Health Service. I mean, this is ridiculous. We're living in the world. We're not just providing for our little healthcare industry. And that's what needs to change.
Right.
Hopefully, I think a mixture of having examples and showing them to the people. I mean, I spend a lot of time in Técnico because at least they're interested. I've never heard anything from, Faculdade de Medicina or, the medical school. But they need to see successful examples, and then I think people are actually fairly quick to emulate them. I think lobbying would help. Things like, we have these, we give it a Latin name because I think it makes it sound less ridiculous, but we have this system called numerus clausus, whereby the Ministry of Education dictates how many places you have in your undergraduate programs. It doesn't correlate with the quality of the program, with the placement success of the program, with anything. In fact, it's so bad that the only reason it's in place is to protect the bad schools, who otherwise would lose their students to the better institutions. And collectively, we let that happen. I never see anybody, I think I'm, see? No. They cut my voice. But, I'm always incensed at this. If there's something that I dislike in Portugal, and I quite like the country, I must say, is we're not meritocratic enough. We don't, we're much more egalitarian, and we're willing to take bad performance if it's spread all around. And that's what needs to change. I think it's changing. I mean, I see a very, very bright young generation. These kids are smarter than we were. They're better prepared, and they've seen the world. They've traveled. They've lived abroad. They've worked for foreign companies. They're not. My generation, I think I'm sort of the last, I usually say that I'm from the last generation of the Ancien Régime. We grew up, without much, without access to foreign press. There was one TV channel in black and white. You couldn't drink a Coke. Yeah. It was close to the outside world. This new generation isn't, and Portugal is quite a nice place. I lived for many years in Los Angeles. LA, within the United States, attracts people because it's a cool place to be. I think it was Michael Bloomberg, I can't recall the sentence, but he has a sentence that goes something like, talent attracts capital much better than vice versa. And what attracts talent is being a cool place to live. Lisbon has, if this country has oil, our oil it's a very nice place to live. And Lisbon is even more of an outlier within Europe than Los Angeles is within the United States, because Europe is altogether further up north. So it's in the 21st century when you don't necessarily need to be stuck with big industry that needs rivers to transport their stuff. You can very well do your job from Lisbon, just like you are or I am, or and still be within the world. Don't miss out on anything.
I'm now very proud to announce that I'm gonna go after you guys next week because we gotta speak more in lobby.
I must clarify something because, to be honest, I'm very respectful of altitude. And yes, you received foreign investment, but what I'm meaning was now it's the first, and it's the first generation.
Yes.
So only from Startup Lisboa we have more than 30 startups that raise investment outside. Okay. This is the first time that happened. Yes.
Clear.
No, that's true.
And congratulations on what everything you achieved. Okay.
Just to wrap up. I think it's a train. It's a chain. So yes, from education to being cool to live in. We've talked about also some regulatory issues or legal issues or tax issues. So the conditions have to be there. And then, get away of the provincial and work together. So not be afraid to share success and or to bring success together, and then sell our image aligned with that. Maybe it's the full chain, and improve on the way how we sell our image. That's very important.
Most definitely, we're going to keep on being on top of it. We'll do our best at PDC and with us. Any question? Anyone that would like to raise a question? There's a gentleman up there, and then we have a 5 minutes last.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Carlos. I head marketing at Colab. For those of you who don't know, we are a Nova-based company. We provide contact center software. We are a competitor of Altitude, and I have many good friends at Altitude. And I have a comment and a question. In my role at Colab, I've been heading internalization in the last couple of years, and I have the privilege to visit many countries where the BPO industry is quite strong. An example is South Africa, and South Africa has a very clear government message to the BPO industry. They are on the correct time zone to Europe. They have the CCOM cable, which is a broadband cable that connects the entire African continent to the US, to Europe, and to the Asia market. And the government pays, and this is a very interesting measure, pays the 3 years of labor of the employees for BPOs that can demonstrate they bring business from abroad. So imagine I'm a teleperformance, I'm based in Cape Town or in Joburg. If I demonstrate I'm bringing eBay and Coca-Cola and other business from abroad, government says I will pay the first 3 years of your employees if it's their first job. What they're trying to achieve is, of course, training for first job, training their population, and of course bringing foreign business in. South Africa is one of our most important markets for us, Colab. Right. It's one of the markets where we sell more licenses to the BPO industry because they have a very clear government message. Bring them on. Okay? So my question back to you is, what is our government doing to bring business from abroad?
I just, another thing I feel strongly about, so I'm very happy that the South African government is indirectly subsidizing Colab, and I'd much prefer that the Portuguese government didn't. I don't know any major player, technology company that started with subsidies. I think a terrible disease that we've suffered for many years is dependence from subsidies, because you start like that and you never grow out of that. You then, the only thing you end up doing is direct your business to receive more subsidies instead of trying to be competitive in the market. So I'm personally horribly against that sort of subsidizing.
I would say there's got to be a middle term there. Obviously, I agree with you, Peter. But the fact is, and Elon mentioned South Africa this morning, I'm not going to call it a governmental approach to it, but it's a national approach to it. They want to be something specific, and all the stakeholders focused on that objective. And we're yet to do it. We still have to do it. We've been on it, speaking to several governments so far. Something has shifted. A few years ago, we would go up and speak to them, and they would ask like 3 times, what are you talking about, outsourcing? And it's the other way around today. We are called to go and speak to them. But, you know, we'll keep on working with them. There's got to be a middle term because we need them as well. We need national support at some level. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll keep on being in touch. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I believe, Rogério, you need no introduction.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank Altitude. Altitude is our sponsor for this conference, and so without them, we couldn't have this conference, so thank you. Thank you to our speakers and panelists as well, and I would like to thank you all for being here. I'm the only one standing between you and your lunch, so it's an awkward place to be, but in any case, I would like to thank all the people that came to this conference, and especially those who came from abroad. Thank you. wholeheartedly. I think that you have experienced our great city of Lisbon, and that's a great pleasure for us. Well, I think this was a great conference, in my opinion. At the beginning, José Carlos Gonçalves, who leads the chapter of outsourcing of APDC, has launched the theme of how to innovate and develop new services, new applications from Portugal. And Fernando Medina, the mayor of Lisbon, has stated that Lisbon is in a boom, in an incredible boom, mainly because of tourism and also because of our entrepreneurial spirit and our new entrepreneurial network. We are a new startup city, and he claimed that Lisbon is a kind of Berlin with good weather. So after that, we had Miguel Frasquilho, head of ICEP, and he has explained how Portugal has reached its objectives on the correcting of structural imbalances, like in the external balance and the fiscal balance. And he talked about the 500 measures to improve competitiveness that the government has implemented. And of course, he has also applauded the privatization program that has captured around 9 billion against the 5 million that were forecasted. And the growth factors that we have in Portugal are, according to him, investments and exports. So please contact ICEP if you want to know how you can invest in Portugal and how you can export, and with their help as well. Then Guilherme Ramos Pereira has started with the study from our own section about outsourcing, which was followed by a study that was presented by Nova SBE, with the help of the University of Loughborough, with their framework. Then we knew from that study presented by Micaela and Paulo Farleiro that Portugal is very competitive in costs of HR with IT skills. In the average rental of office, we are moderate in cost of telecoms, electricity, and corporate taxes, which are in any case decreasing. We have a good quality of R&D institutions and management schools, and we are much better than our Eastern competitors on these issues. We have a great deal of IT quality skills, including qualified engineers. And of course, we have a high internet bandwidth speed, which is a differentiating factor of Portugal. We have high-speed roads and good airports, meaning not high-speed roads, high-quality roads. Cannot high speed in Portugal, and good airports, and we have to work on our rail system, which is not so good. We have low inflation, low political risk. We have very good market potential, not only because we are in Europe with its 500 million customers, but also close to our Portuguese-speaking countries with an additional 250 million potential clients. Portugal is better than most of their direct competitors. That's what the study shows. Then we had a lecture from Professor Ilham Oshri, and he said that it was his first lecture on nearshoring, which was of course a privilege to us. And he showed us how the industry is evolving. He showed us what are the traditional drivers of this industry, and he has defined the industry as the relocation of organizational activities to a wholly owned subsidiary or to an independent service provider in a maximum of 2 time zones away, which is of course a great definition. And the drivers are of course lower hidden costs, the fact that we are in the same time zone or closer cultural ties, data security, and regulatory issues. And the trends, he explained, are underway, and he has explained some of those trends. The result of his talk, or what I've got from his talk, is that we have to find our blue ocean, because others have also found theirs. Some positioning strategies are foreign direct investments, how to attract more of these. Others, like the UK, are devising themselves as an outsourcing hub. And some of them have their very own specialized branding, like Germany, for example, in shared services. So what's our branding? What's our positioning? How to find our blue ocean? That's the message we got from them. Then we have studied several business cases, one from Vodafone with Antonio Veiga, that explained how they are doing and working with their call center, with their Atlantic Network Operations Center, and with Cellfocus. And we had Nokia Networks by Pedro Martins explaining how their service center was chosen to be in Portugal and not to be somewhere else. And we have, of course, several factors that he has explained that allowed Nokia to choose Portugal. And we had the story of Teleperformance, a customer experience management company with a history started in 1994 with now 100 million revenue and with a compound average growth rate of about 30 to 40% of the last 15 years. The call centers are a very good value proposition. They are a very good value driver, and there is nothing wrong with that business on the other way around. And then we have the panels, and we had Rui Costa from Fundação Champalimau, who said to us that we explained how to bring talented people to Portugal, and for that we have to be very good at something. We have to be very global from the beginning. We have to show people where we want to be, and we have to commit to create value, in this case, knowledge. We have to have a global perspective. And from Pedro Santa Clara from Nova SBA, we learned that Nova is in this business school growing at a 40% rate per year is applicants over the last 7 years, and they have more now international students than Portuguese ones. And they choose Portugal. Why? Because we are a great lifestyle at discount prices. And Mário Silva Pereira from Altitude has shown how his business has grown from a small startup to a big business, international business today. He grew from Portugal, but he was born international. He shows their options, and that's what the country has to do. We saw how Startup Lisboa has been helping this environment to boost a lot of companies, and they say that they are, João Vasconcelos says that it's very easy to attract foreigners to Portugal these days, and especially to Lisbon, a city with a cultural attitude which is different. You can find all the cultures together in Lisbon, and in this, Lisbon is the best of Europe. And the conclusion of this conference from my part is, yes, Portugal is great. Yes, we have extremely good companies. We have extremely good showcases. We need to position ourselves better. We have to be global. We have to be proud of ourselves, proud of our service businesses. We have to find our blue ocean. IPDC is going to help outsourcing companies to find their blue ocean. Thank you.